Welcome back to the dungeon. Pugs here, and today we're going to sit back and look at some of the questions that have come up in the previous videos. And those questions are, what would you recommend to a new reloader or even an advanced reloader to go ahead and help simplify the process in reloading in regards to, it doesn't matter if it's single stage or progressive or anything like that. What kind of small tools do I use in my shop to go ahead and help me get through and get jobs done faster, simpler, easier? So I had probably about 10 or 12 people ask me what kind of things that I have that I can show you guys. So I've gathered a bunch of stuff here on the bench. We're going to go through it today, and hopefully you guys can get some insight to what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and what when it comes to like the essentials that I use on a day-to-day basis here in the dungeon. So the first thing I want to show you is something that every reloader, I think everything I'm about to show you is something every reloader really should consider picking up for their bench. I highly recommend everything I'm going to show you. I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm not getting paid for this. This is what I do. This is what Pugs does here in the dungeon reloading group here in Baltimore. So we're going to start off with something very simple. A standard basic primer flip tray. There's two types that I employ here in the dungeon. One of them being the RCBS. They're like a dime a dozen. You can get them anywhere. Find them at garage sales, eBay, in the reloading groups and forums. They're all over the place. They come up in buyouts. Very key for me. What happens with this is that when you have your primer trays and you open them, you'll put them face down. Well, you'll hold the tray. I'll actually demonstrate for everybody. Go ahead and, here's some primers. Go ahead and open the tray up. And as we look at the primers, we can see, well, guess what? They're not all the same. They're not all flipped the same way. So what the primer flip tray does is it allows you to take some brands, and this is key here, some brands, these happen to be CCI, Cellar Ballot, they fit nice into this RCBS so that we take it and flip it, and when we flip it, our primers are in here. And what can happen now is in this case, if I was doing this for one of my progressive presses and I'd be loading up our primer tubes, I would only be able to get 1, 2, 3, 4 primers in the primer tube before what I would do next is I would take the primer flip tray and put the lid on it and flip them over, give it a little bit of a shake, and lo and behold, now I can pick up all the rest of these primers because I like to pick up the primers with the cup end up. That would be the end that you see on the back of the brass. So I would take up a primer tube and I would pick all these up one by one and fill them into the tube. We'd be good to go. But there are some brands of primers that come in bigger boxes. So when that happens, I turn to old Dillon Precision's ginormous primer flip tray. And I've got several varieties of them here. I've got 2 gold ones, 4 black ones. I think there's a blue anodized one in here somewhere. So the primer flip tray, definitely one of the big ones in my heart, in my bench. We use this all the time. I can't stress these enough. If you don't have one, go pick one up. It doesn't matter what brand it is. They're the simplistic part of what makes this so good is that it's does one simple job. It flips your primers for you, so you don't have to do them one at a time. You do them all at once. And like I said, here in the dungeon, we can't live without them. We're back again. And in this case, I have the Frankfurt Arsenal Handa primer. We have a couple of these here in the dungeon. We usually use these when we've got, maybe 500 or 600 pieces of brass, whether they be like 30-06, 308, mostly like rifle. I don't think we use them very much for pistol. We do the pistol on the presses and things like that. But what's really nice and convenient about this is it's got a couple collets that allow you to go ahead and change the different diameters in which of brass you could slide on here and decap. Everything from 222 all the way up to I actually think 300 Win Mag will do on these. So very simple design. Slide the piece of brass on there. Bam. Real quick, nice and simple. Brass gets deprimed. And we toss them in a bin and we do the next one, and so on and so forth. I was gonna say my wife and I spent quite a bit of time when we were depriming like 308 brass or Sometimes we'll get like the crimp primer 556 Lake City or WCC, and or even the FC, the federal brass, and we end up spending time just hand depriming everything, just because it saves less. It's less wear and tear on the machines. We could do it while we're talking. We could sit upstairs while we're watching TV, whatever the case may be. But yeah, we deprime brass, and then what ends up happening is all the bad primers end up inside here, and then I have a little bin that we go ahead and dump primers into right here. So it's one of my old, no, I don't care if it's one of the Dillon presses or if it is the hand deprimer. Just put primers in here, call it a day. Once it gets filled, and this here saves us a lot of time. And like I said, you can use different collets on here, similar ones that go on the Frankfurt Arsenal Platinum case prep machine that allow you to change and hold the case just right, so when you slide the case on, the depriming pin is right in perfect alignment, and then nice simple squeeze of the handle. 99% of the time it's the way it works, and primers go here. The only thing I can say is there's one modification that I did, and it seems, you know, a lot of people are also doing it as well, is, you know, I wrap some gauze or some felt underneath with electrical tape on the grip just to make it a little bit more comfortable, because we are actually, like, you know, doing this motion a ton of times while we're sitting there. And like I said, it can hurt your hand a little bit, but if you're doing a couple hundred pieces of brass, up to 500 pieces at least here in the dungeon, this is what we're using. It's fantastic. It's better than setting up a tool head and running the tool head. It's better than doing it on the single stage. Just makes it so simple to do. So Frankfurt Arsenal hand deprimer. To follow the hand deprimer, I have an RCBS universal hand primer. Meaning, instead of using the press to prime, whether it be a single stage and it's got that little cup, or even like a Dillon Progressive where it's got the punch, this can be done in low volume situations when we're processing like Lapua brass, or, you know, preferably large rifle brass for the most part. We'll hand deprime most of our brass. So like 308, 30-06, 6.5 Grendel, 6.5 Creedmoor, 260, all the way up to 300 Win Mag, 300 ROM. I use the hand deprimer mainly because I'm doing such low volume counts of ammunition at that point that it just doesn't make sense for me to load up a press or anything like that. So for a nice quick situation, I do highly recommend the RCBS Universal. It's got little jaws and teeth that allow it to clip onto all different kinds of brass, and it also comes with a small and large primer punch, so that it'll work for anything from pistol brass all the way up to like large rifle brass or large rifle magnum brass. So they're a little expensive. They do have different models. Everything, every manufacturer's got one. Some have bench mounted models. Some use strips. I like the RCBS one because it's got the tray. You know, I pop it out just like with the primer flip tray. I put it on top of the primer tray, flip it back over. If I have to flip any over, that's cool. I do that. If not, not a big deal. But I highly recommend one of these. It makes my process so much simpler and allows you to get full control and feel that primer seat in the pocket. So if for any reason or any example you may have a crimped primer pocket, you're going to know. This is going to tell you so you don't waste the primer, don't cause it to accidentally go off or anything like that. Very good tool to have on the bench. Highly recommend one. Try a couple, see what you like, but RCBS has got me on this one. I've tried them. I've tried the Lees. I've tried the Hornady. I really do like the RCBS. So RCBS Universal hand deprimer. Another item you got to have for your bench is some sort of universal shell holder kit. In my collection, I have two. I just ordered the third. The Lee is the one I use the most. I do have an RCBS shell set, and I just ordered a Hornady because apparently the Hornady ones work really well with their dies. I guess their dies are designed. I don't know. That's what somebody told me. I'll let you know in another video once we get there. But what this is the universal shell holder set is like a kit of 11 to 12 pieces that allow you to put in the majority of the single stage that are out there. Doesn't matter if it's a Lee single stage or an RCBS or Lyman. These are all universal for the most part. Nowadays, at least. Back in the good old days, long time ago, there were some differences, but they have this little tapered end on the bottom that slides onto your press and allows you to easily, quickly change the what kind of case you could put on your press at that particular time. It holds the shell right around the rim of the shell. The biggest advantage to these is this: I bought them in a kit. I've beat them up. I've used them a lot. They work in my. I have an RCBS rock chucker behind me. I got a 1959 Lyman Spartan here, my first press. They work in both. They're interchangeable. It works great. So I have a couple sets of these. I highly recommend them. So go ahead and grab yourself a set. Some die sets come with them. Some of the Hornady die sets, a lot of the Lee die sets come with them. So they're not always needed, but it's just nice and convenient to have them all in one shot. And one of the conveniences about this set is it includes a piece of paper. It's a cheat sheet that tells you exactly which shell holder number to use for which caliber. That's awesome. Some of the die sets come with them. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But to me, it's nice to have a universal shell set. So make sure you grab yourself a set of these. These are valuable to me. So what we have next is we have the case prep pads. These case prep / lube pads are used when I'm using small volumes of brass, probably 50 or less pieces of brass, things that would usually fit in one of the, the case holders, case loading block. And, very simple. Just put some of the lube on the pad, take one piece of brass or a couple pieces of brass at a time, rub it on, put it in the case holder, and then it's good. We can go ahead and size it now. We can go ahead and prime it now, whatever the case may be. It depends on what you're doing or how you're doing it or where in the process you're at. But it's very convenient to have a couple of these lying around instead of having to get one shot or the lanolin and alcohol mix or the Dillon case lube, spray it into a bag, spray it out into a towel, whatever your process is. It's too much work for just a couple pieces. So these are valuable to have on your bench. I highly recommend them. It doesn't matter what brand they are. And as for the lube, there's all kinds. Try and see what works for you, what you like. But just remember, try not to get too much on the shoulder of the case because you don't want to dent the case. The same thing applies like when you're working with the lanolin stuff, the one shot and things like that. You want to let it dry, or you don't want to get a lot of it up on the shoulder, so you don't want to dent those shoulders. Not a big deal. Some people, they don't like that. Just a forewarning, pro tip. So case lube pads, don't forget to grab some. Another incredibly important, valuable tool that I have that I think every reloader should have, it's almost mandatory to have some form of these, and it's some sort of calipers. Some people actually use rulers, some people use micrometers for certain things. Get yourself a good set of calipers. The set that I have here is a midway set. It's like a $100 set. They go up and down in price, but I think these were like $100 back when I bought them. I also have a dial caliper, meaning it's the manual caliper. I seem to have better luck with these than the digital ones, but any caliper set you get is going to be better than not having some. I don't care if you buy the Harbor Freight set and get them on sale using a coupon, or you spend $300-400 on a set of machinist calipers. Grab yourself a set. It does matter. Like I said, I use these midway ones. They've worked very well for me. From caliper set to caliper set, they've been very consistent, so I'm not upset by that by any means. Preference, I choose the dial caliper, but if you like the digital caliper, there's no harm, no foul there. Whatever works for you, just make sure you have a good set of calipers on your bench. One thing I've got to say, that hand loading precision ammunition, it's really convenient to have yourself a funnel kit. This is a more modern funnel kit. I have some of the old funnel kits where it's got like this huge metal, like a little metal thing like this, and it's got this huge taper. It's like a universal one. It works for everything. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is the Frankfurt Arsenal funnel kit. This comes with a funnel and a ton of bases and a little chart to tell you which bases per caliber or case neck or case mount size to go with, all the way up to universal. So it's very convenient. There's an elongated drop tube as well. So if you're loading those really tall cases like the belted magnums, like the 7mm Rem mag or the 300 Win mag, it allows the powder to fall and then settle better. So this kit's kind of nice. I couldn't find that piece to show you, but for $20, it's worth having a good funnel set. They do have other funnel sets that are more expensive. I happened to pick one of these up pretty cheap. I think I got this at a garage sale for like $5. So, I mean, they're very valuable to have. It prevents you from spilling your powder into your shell holder, onto your press, into the case holder, whatever the case may be. It's just convenient to have. I enjoy it, and the fact that, like I said, you could take and remove the base. There's a lock O-ring on the bottom here that keeps it in place. And it's on there good. So I'm not going to take it off. Like I said, you saw the other options that you have. Just about any caliber, from like a 20 caliber, like a Ruger 204, 204 Ruger, all the way up to, I think this kit says up to 50 cal. So you can even do your 45, 70, things like that. So it's a good kit to have. Pick one up. It's been good for me. I can't say enough good things. As you notice, I've got quite a few Frankfurt Arsenal things. It's just how it fell. I mean, I've tried a lot of this stuff. And again, this is just another Frankfurt Arsenal product I can't live without. So, Frankfurt Arsenal funnel set. Here in the dungeon, it's bound to happen sooner or later. You're going to make a mistake. Whether it be you put too much powder in, you seat the bullet too deep, maybe you put the bullet in, it crushes the neck or crushes the case. Well, you kind of want to salvage as much of that as possible, and that's money. And on top of that, you don't want to throw money away. You don't want to throw good projectiles away. So how do you reclaim those? There's bullet pullers. There's a couple different kinds. There's the hammer bullet pullers that literally put the case in, you hit it on something really hard, and it uses like, kinetic energy or inertia to pull the bullet and powder into the hammered portion of the puller. There's the Hornady cam puller, where essentially it's a die that goes in a single stage. You rise the case up, use the cam lock to grab the bullet, and then you pull the lever, push the lever forward to pull the case down. It separates the case from the bullet. I have the RCBS colleted bullet puller, and this consists of a die and collets. Now, each of these collets are like split along the sides. So what happens is it allows it that when you tighten the handle at the top, it squeezes and pulls on the bullet. It causes it to use friction to hold it in place, while just like what the cam lock does, push the lever forward to bring the case down, and lo and behold, pulls the bullet. Now, it's nice. What I like about this particular one is very rarely do I get any marks, any marring. You can't even tell that I pulled the bullet from a mistake that I made just by the jaw design that this has. It's nice, it's smooth, it grips really well. I've got in my set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total different collets. That usually covers just about everything. Some of the ones I have are like the 270 or 6.8. I've got the 264, the 45, 30 cal, 22 cal, 40 cal. So I've got a myriad of collets in which I use. They all sit nicely in the box. When I'm not using them, they go right back in my drawer. Very simple to set up. There's a locking die, like a locking ring, that use an Allen key to lock. It's already set up for one of my single stages. I roll right through it, pull the bullet out, dump the powder back in my bin. If the brass is damaged, I've got a brass bin underneath that I have to recycle my brass. I'll deprime it and recycle it at the junkyard. I use the bullet again on the next case. So a bullet puller of some sort is definitely necessary, because like I said, nobody's perfect. Commercial places even have air pullers, where what will happen is the case will slide through, and a collet will come down and make create a seal, and it'll use suction to pull the bullet and the powder out all at the same time. That's what most commercial demillers will actually use. I'm not big enough for that. I like to stay, relatively small, and I do stuff, mass scale all the way down to like precision reloading. There's no need for me to get into that. So on my bench, I've got the RCBS colleted bullet puller. Works for me, but just a bullet puller in general is nice to have. It allows you to recycle your mistakes and continue to go ahead and make ammunition without wasting a ton of money. What we have here are case gauges. A case gauge is a gauge that allows you to see if your produced ammunition is going to, or should fit in your chamber. A lot of people will do the plunk test in some pistol barrels. People go and do the feed test and the bolt actions. You don't really want to do that with an AR, but if you do, be careful and be safe because it's got a floating firing pin. We have these case gauges. As we're setting up our presses in each stage, these case gauges come in handy. Right off the bat from the get-go, on the sizing station, this will tell you if your brass is sized properly. You'll slide the piece of brass in, and inside each one of these, this one happens to be for a 45. When you slide the 45 case in, it'll fit flush. And that's what you're looking for. In this case, on the pistol, it wants to fit flush. On some of these, though, like I'll pull out one of the ones I had custom made. Here's a 224 Valkyrie. There's a little slot here. I don't know if you could see it in the video, but what happens is when you drop the 224 Valkyrie in here, it has a little bit of a range, which will like go, no-go kind of thing. If it sits flush with this strip, that's ideal. That's where you want it at. If it's a little bit high, but not above these slides here, it's still good. It means it's still in the go range kind of deal. And then also what happens, it's measuring off the case shoulder on most of these rifle ones. So what happens when you put it in there, if the case isn't sized properly around the diameter of the case, and then also the neck and shoulder ain't sized is not sized properly, then it'll stick up too far, and then you've got to change your die, either turn it down a notch, or if you notice it falls too deep, meaning the head of the piece of brass is below the silver area, then your die is down too far and you want to take it back a little bit. So this is a tool, a very good aid to help you know whether you're setting your press up right, to size your brass, to seat your bullets, and also has trim length. This particular die does not show trim length, but I have one in here that does. This one here is a perfect example. This is for a 300 blackout. We would slide the 300 blackout in the top. Again, this one has a slot, just like the 224 Valkyrie I had made. But unlike the 224 Valkyrie, there's another slot on the bottom here. And what happens is when I push the brass in, it fits right at the area of the recessed area. That's good. That's where we want it. But there's a tolerance. The minimum is the slotted area. The high spot over here is the highest area. If it's above that, you need to trim your brass. So it's an excellent tool. It's an excellent gauge. I'd say 99% of the time when you're producing hand loads, that if it fits in your case gauge, it's going to fit in whatever firearm you're going to use. And like I said, I say 99% because there's some random stuff that can cause an issue with. Example, if the bullet's not constant, out of concentricity, meaning when the bullet was seated, it's not perfectly seated all the way around. So what'll happen with that is the bullet might be canted a little bit one side to another. Some of these gauges will catch that. The other thing too is if on the rim, the rim of the case, there's a nick or something like that caused by an ejector, or it had been stepped on and there's a little nick, then what happens is it'll catch up here, and when you try to push it down, it won't go down in. So in that case, I have a little file. I'll look at the brass before I do anything with it. If there's a little nick, I'll file the burr off, just real quick, fine file, nothing fancy. And if it plunks in the case gauge, then we're good. If it doesn't, then something's wrong with it. I don't want to chance it. Goes in my recycling bin, and then it'll get recycled. So case gauges. I have one for every caliber. There's probably close to 20 in this box here. So yeah, there's a bunch in there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 14 in here, just this one box. I've got another box over in my toolbox. So case gauges. Don't mind the extreme box. It just works well for packing. Pro tip,